Good morning. Good morning. Hope you took a few minutes to write down your goals, your gratitudes, and your intentions. It's very few people do that, and that makes you, I'm going to say abnormal, and it's good to be abnormal because you look at what the normal person does on a day-to-day basis and how they live. We need to strive to do something different, something more, and be abnormal. And taking the time to do that is very abnormal and very productive. So I'm glad you did that. So I'm excited about the conversation this morning. I want to talk about the prospecting basics, basically the fundamentals to a great prospecting call. And that may not sound exciting, may not sound sexy. You may say, well, gosh, I don't really want to talk about that or be involved in a conversation like that because I don't like prospecting. I do everything I can, John, to avoid it. Well, that's the very reason we need to talk about it, because I believe that if you understand the fundamentals, the basics, that it makes it a whole lot easier to actually do that thing. And here's the point. It's your job. I want you to think about it. Your job, ultimately, if we're talking about doing business in real estate, is to not sell homes, because I believe that a home sells a home. If you have a client who's looking to buy a home and they want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch, and you're showing them 1-bedroom, 1-bath condominiums, will they buy that condominium? And the answer, of course, is no, they won't. See, the home has to have the features and benefits. It has to be the location and the price that they want. And if you're not showing them those sorts of homes, they're not going to buy a home. It doesn't matter how smooth you are, how effective you are in communicating with them, they're not going to buy the home. So ultimately, the home sells the home. What you really sell a client on, whether a buyer or seller, is choosing you versus the competition. And the question is, well, how do you do that? Well, number one, you've got to be willing to at least reach out to people so that they have an opportunity to choose you versus the competition, because whether it's your sphere of influence or let alone the people who don't know you, people aren't necessarily thinking about you all the time. I know that may come as a shock, and your ego may say, what? Wait a minute. You mean the people in my sphere that I like, trust, and respect, that I love, they're not thinking about me constantly? Yeah, sorry, they're not. And so your job, my job, is to reach out to people consistently. That's what the job is. And in the real world, if you had a 9-to-5 job, gang, I want you to think about this. If you had a 9-to-5 job where you had to punch in, and punch out every time you came in and then went to on break, you had to punch out and then come back in, you had to punch in. They clock your hours, the number of hours you work, and they also pay attention to your work product. In other words, what you produce in the time that you're working. And if you don't show up and do your job, if you don't show up and meet the quota, their expectations, they're not going to pay you, because what they will do is they will fire you. Or if you don't show up for work one day, they're not going to pay you. It doesn't work that way. And you all know that. The challenge is, in real estate, we don't think in those terms that, well, wait a minute, I do have a job. Good news is really it's a business, but there is a job to do. And we don't think in these terms that if I don't do my job, I'm not going to get paid. And yet practically that's what happens. Most real estate agents don't get paid, at least not very consistently. And to the point that it's difficult for them to survive in the business of real estate. That's why 80% of the people who get in the business are out within 2 years, because they don't do the job. It's not that the job is that difficult. It's just that they don't do the job. And when you don't do the job, you don't make any money. And it's tough to stay in a business, in a job where you're not getting paid anything. So let's talk then about the basics in prospecting. I want you to take notes on this, please. And of course, this is being recorded and you can go back and watch it on YouTube, but please take notes. Number one, in terms of prospecting basics, presence. And I don't mean Christmas presents. I mean presence, being present, presence of mind. Presence, presence. The single most important thing that we can do, no matter what we're doing, is to be present, be in the moment, to put everything that we are mentally, physically, and emotionally into that thing, because we're going to get much better results if we do that. It's important that we're eliminating the distractions. It is so easy in today's world to become distracted. I think it's so interesting that we see that attention deficit disorder, ADHD, is higher than it's ever been in terms of the diagnoses. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact the way kids are raised these days and all of the various distractions with electronics. And I'm sure that diet and other things have an impact on that. But I absolutely know that as much as kids are raised on electronics, that affects their ability to stay focused. And so we're in a world where we're very challenged to stay focused, and yet the fundamental hasn't changed. If you want to get great results in something, you have to be present. It's like being in a conversation with somebody. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody where you realize like, oh, they are not paying attention to me? You know, you'll say something and they'll say, right, and it's like, well, wait a minute. The response should have been more than, right. You realize they're not paying attention to me. And of course, that doesn't feel good. You don't want to be in that conversation. You don't want to have a conversation like that again. And if it's somebody you don't know very well, you probably won't have a conversation with them again. And if it's somebody you do know, you might confront them and say, hey, you're not even paying attention to me. Pay attention to me. Well, your potential prospects aren't going to say that. And they're really not going to know what's going on. They'll just feel a certain way and know that they don't feel comfortable. We have to be present in the moment. So we've got to eliminate the distractions. There are so many distractions that affect our ability to be present. I watch agents try to prospect, and simultaneously they're checking their phone to see if they received any texts. They're checking for any emails. They're checking social media. If they get a phone call, they'll take the phone call, interrupting their prospecting time. They'll allow for the God of minutes, another agent or somebody interrupting and say, hey, do you have just a second? I want to ask you a question. Gang, if you're going to be an effective prospector, if you're going to get great results consistently, we've got to eliminate the distractions. So make sure you're writing that down. I have to be present. I have to eliminate the distractions. So when it comes to your prospecting time, commit that you're not going to get on your phone and read text, emails, take other phone calls, and that when you're at your workstation, or if you have an office, that you're putting up a sign that you're prospecting, please do not interrupt me. And people will respect that. In fact, if you will do that, it will encourage other people to do the same thing that you're doing. And if you see other people doing what you're doing, it's going to make it easier for you to be consistent and doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is prospecting. Really creating an environment that's consistent with and conducive to prospecting. Because, gang, I find it so fascinating over the years. Agents want to find an answer to the challenges in their business. And then I'll ask them, well, are you prospecting consistently? And the answer consistently is no. So if you want your business to improve, if you want to earn a lot more money, if you really want the truth, the real answer is you've got to prospect consistently. So be present, eliminate the distractions, create an environment that's conducive to you being focused and having great conversations with people. In other words, be where you are. Be where you are. And you all know what I'm talking about, because there have been those moments in your life where you were very present, like you could feel the energy and things were just flowing. You were present and in the moment. When we are present in the moment, when we bring everything that we have to bear on that situation, we get very powerful results. Remember this, focus equals power. And that leads me to prospecting basic number 2. Set your intentions. Set your intentions. Remember, I said focus equals power. The more focused we are, the more powerful we are. So set your intentions that when you isolate the time to prospect, know what you intend to do. Well, John, what do you mean what I intend to do? I guess I intend to prospect. Well, no, what do you intend to accomplish? Set the standard that every time you prospect, you're going to set one appointment. Well, but just because I set the intention, John, that I'm going to set one appointment doesn't mean that I'm always going to set one appointment. No, you're right. You're not. But here's the thing. Every time that Michael Jordan took a shot, he intended to make the basket. Did he make the basket every time? No. Every time a professional basketball player passes the ball, he intends to throw a good pass, but sometimes he doesn't. Every time a quarterback throws the football, he intends to throw a pass to the receiver and for the receiver to catch it. And that doesn't happen every time. But the fact is, with the intention that that's going to happen, the chances of that actually happening increases dramatically. And we all know that. We all understand that. So if you will set the intention every day that that's what you do, what it does is it marshals more of your energy, your resources, your intellect, your mental capacity, and it focuses on that one thing. And the more of you that's focused on that particular goal of setting one appointment, the more likely it will happen. Well, just think about that. Are you setting the intention every single day when you get up that that's what you're going to do? That today, my job is completely, entirely to set an appointment. That if I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. And if I'm not doing my job, I'm not getting paid. Just want you to think about that. I promise you this, because gang, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. And I've made myself a multimillionaire a couple of times, because the first time I lost it. But I've made myself a multimillionaire because of real estate. I'm handing to you the truth, the gold, that if you will take it, it will make you a millionaire as well. But you have to follow the rules. So do you have the intention that every single day you're going to set an appointment? Now, look, in terms of setting intentions, you can set a goal for, well, I'm going to make X number of contacts. A contact would be an adult who is able to purchase a home, right? So you can't count a kid, right? But if you call a home, an adult answers, that's a contact. A lot of agents will set a goal for making so many contacts every day, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. There's some agents who have a goal of talking to 100 people a day. Yes, 100 people a day, believe it or not. That is one of their intentions. I'm going to talk to X number of people. So that could be one of your intentions. Another intention could be that you're going to prospect for a specific number of hours. I'm going to prospect today for 2 hours. I'm going to prospect today for 3 hours. That's one of your intentions, right? And then the next one, of course, we've already talked about would be appointments. I'm going to set one appointment today. So you can set all three of those intentions, or you can set one of them. This is what I would recommend that you do. I would set all three and define success as achieving any one of those three. So see, I can be successful as a prospector if I set a goal for contacting, say, 30 people today, and I talked to 30 people but didn't set an appointment. Or I could be successful today as a prospector if I committed to prospecting for 3 hours and didn't reach 30 people and didn't set an appointment. It's still a success because I set aside 3 hours. That was my intention, and I did it. Or I could set the intention, I'm going to set one appointment, but do that in an hour and only talk to 10 people. That's still a success because I set the one appointment and that was my intention. Now, just for the record, if you prospect for an hour and set one appointment, I'm not telling you should stop if you committed to prospecting for 3 hours. Prospect the additional 2 hours, because if you set one appointment, you'll probably set 2 or 3 more because you're going to be on a roll. And you know what it feels like to set the appointment. So don't stop at that point, keep going. But hopefully that makes sense. Set your intentions, contacts, hours, and appointments. Know what your standards are with respect to those things every single day. And as long as one of those 3 things happens, then you were successful. You did your job. So what is prospecting basic number 3? Be scripted. Write that down. I need to be scripted. Now, for a lot of you, that's a very, it's a scary thing, or it turns you off. You say, well, it's disingenuous. I don't want to learn a script because it sounds phony. I just want to be me. I just need to be me. I need to be authentic. Well, I appreciate you saying that, but the fact is you're already scripted. You are. So much of your life is scripted. If you're already in the office, I guarantee you drove to the office the same way that you did the last time you went to the office. That if you put on makeup already this morning, you ladies, that you put the makeup on the same way that you always do, right? We all have our routines. A script isn't just what we say, it's the way we behave, right? And look, your doctor has a script, an airline pilot has a script, They say the same things over and over again. The flight attendant has a script. In fact, sometimes you'll see them just reading the card if they don't have it memorized yet. And then you have those who have been doing it long enough that they have it memorized and they can just say it. Then there are those that have it memorized. They've been doing it so long. They've been doing it so long, and they get so tired of it. So then they start to add some things to it to make it a little bit more exciting. You've all probably had that flight attendant who actually makes all of those safety introductions and explanations very fun, because they've practiced it so much that they don't have to think about what they're going to say, and then they can add some humor to it. You and I have to do the same thing when it comes to prospecting. Learn a script, because that script will allow us to have a great conversation, leading people to a specific outcome. Look, Tom Cruise gets paid $25 million or more for a film. Now, in essence, what does Tom do? Tom is handed a script. He memorizes the script, and then they record him saying the script. And because he practices the script so much, memorizing it, and then on how he delivers it, they pay him a lot of money. Well, why do they pay him a lot of money? Why do they pay him 25 million or more? Because you are willing to pay $20 to go to a movie theater and watch him recite a script that he memorized. You're willing to give up 20 of your dollars and 2 hours of your time or more to watch him do that. And then I hear agents say, well, no, I can't memorize a script. Well, I can just tell you that if you'll memorize a script and learn it to the extent that Tom Cruise does or other great actors and actresses do, that you'll make millions too. You'll just do it in the business of real estate. Please get out of your own way and be willing to memorize a script and learn how to deliver it in a powerful way. Gang, remember, it's not so much the words that you use, but the way that they are delivered. But if you can take a script that's been proven, it's a formula that's proven to work, and you memorize that and make that yours, and then learn how to deliver it in a way that sounds like you'll become unstoppable in this business. Very, very powerful. So my question is, are you willing to be scripted? You're scripted in so many other areas of your life. But in real estate, it's interesting how most real estate agents say, well, but I can't do that because it's disingenuous. I don't want to be a chameleon. I want to be authentic. I want to be me. When I hear an agent say that, what I hear them saying is, I'm more concerned about me than I am my clients, because I watch how most agents communicate in the very little business that they do. And that tells me that they're not making other people feel very confident or very comfortable. Because if you made people feel comfortable and confident, you'd have more people working with you, because they'd feel safe and secure, and they'd feel okay having you help them. But when they don't feel safe and secure, they choose somebody else to work with. So when an agent says, yeah, I can't do that because it's not me, they're focused on the wrong person. See, would you want your doctor or the airline pilot or the flight attendant to forget their script? To say, you know the drill. Especially if it's a new pilot or a new flight attendant. The answer is no, because it's a matter of life and death. So man, be scripted, because you are in so many ways in your life. And then prospecting basic number 4, I want you to write down response pattern. Write down response pattern. And what I'm going to do is, this is an opportunity to go through a role play. So let me see here. Kelly Brzezinski, let's have you do it. Good morning. Can you take your phone off of mute so you and I can have a conversation? I'm going to be the agent. You'll be the prospect. And I don't know if it's Russ or Dylan who's running the call this morning, but if you can, take the group off of mute so that individuals can take their phone off of mute and talk. Kelly, are you there?
I'm here, John.
Cool. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Hello.
So I want you to be, let's make you an expired listing. Okay. Your home has been on the market for 6 months. It just expired, and I'm calling you. And what I want to do is I want to go through what I call the response pattern and the various points within that response pattern. In other words, it's a formula that we can follow when we prospect. If we have a formula, a step-by-step process that we can follow, it kind of breaks down the mystery or the complications of a great prospecting call. And it helps us realize, well, there is a pattern to it. And if I just learn this pattern, I'm going to be a better prospector, and I'm going to get better results when I call people. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to start and stop, start and stop, start and stop, because we're going to take a segment of the conversation, and then I'm going to explain to everybody what's happening there, and then we'll go to the next section, and I'll explain to everybody what's happening, so that there's a conversation about the process. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to ring, 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 and then you're going to answer, and I'm going to introduce myself, and we're going to go from there. So ring, ring, ring.
Hello.
Good morning. Is this Mr. Brzezinski?
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, Mr. Brzezinski, this is John Ciet. I'm a real estate broker in the area, and I noticed that your home was listed, but now it's showing up as an expired listing. And I'm just calling to see when you plan on interviewing an agent who can actually get your home sold this time.
Well, I don't know. Kind of burned on the whole thing, so I'm not even sure what we're doing at this stage.
Okay, so it sounds like you're frustrated. In fact, you said you're kind of burned out on the whole thing. And so you're not certain what you're going to do at this time. You know what, Mr. Brzezinski, if I were you, I would feel exactly the same way too. I mean, it's got to be very frustrating. You had your home on the market for 6 months and it's still not sold. So having said that, let me ask you, had your home sold, where were you planning on moving to next?
Colorado.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. So gang, now notice what I did. Under your notes, I want you to write response pattern. So Kelly, I want you to do this as well. Write down response pattern.
Okay.
The response pattern is the formula. This is what I am doing in the phone call. So response pattern, number 1, ask a closing question. Ask a closing question. Now notice what I did. Kelly, I'm gonna quiz you on this. What was my closing question? Do you remember? You were muffled there. Say that again.
Well, your closing question, I don't know, you asked when I was going to interview agents again.
Yes, that's it. The closing question was, because see, your home's expired, so I've asked you when you're planning on interviewing an agent who can actually get your home sold this time. That was a closing question. In other words, I was asking when you're going to start to interview, implying that we need to set an appointment. So I asked the closing question. So step number 1 is to ask a closing question. In other words, it's a question of taking action. Let's take an action. We're going to set an appointment in this case. Or it could be, if it were a conversation about signing the contract, to sign the contract. Because the response pattern works whether we're asking them to set an appointment or to sign a purchase contract or a listing contract or a buyer broker contract. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so response pattern, step number 1 is to ask a closing question. In other words, ask them a question that requires some sort of action. Okay. Step number 2 is to listen with what I call repeating and affirming. So write that down. Step number 2 is listening with a repeat and affirm. Step number 2 is to listen with a repeat and affirm. So Kelly, I don't know if you noticed, do you remember how I did that?
Yes, you repeated pretty much exactly what I said about being burned on the whole process, being tired of it, that sort of thing.
Right. And gang, the reason I do that, it's for Kelly's benefit, because here's the thing. In fact, somewhere next to this point, write down the number 1 human need is acknowledgement. The number 1 human need is acknowledgement or recognition or validation, any of those words. But the number 1 human need is to be validated. And what I want to do, especially as a stranger, Kelly's never talked to me. I want to make certain that right out of the gate, rather than trying to prove him wrong or convince him to do something else, when he expresses to me how he feels, all I want to do is repeat and affirm that. So I want to use his words to let him know, hey, Mr. Brzezinski, I heard what you said. And then I went a step further, because remember, this is repeat and affirm. So do you remember how I affirmed?
I'd feel the same way. I'd feel the same way if I were you.
Exactly. See, and when somebody does that for us, imagine being in an argument with somebody. The tensions are high, and you're expressing to them how you're upset, what they did or why you're angry. And you express that to them, and they respond to you saying, So I hear you saying you're upset because of the language that I use, the tone of voice. And you know what? If I were you, now that I think about it, I would feel the same way too. You're right. If somebody did that with you in an argument, immediately your level of anxiety or anger would dissipate. It would start to fall. Well, when you're calling a stranger like this, they very quickly recognize that it's a sales call. It's a solicitation call. And so there is anxiety. In some cases, there's agitation because some people get agitated by those sorts of calls. So when they express how they're feeling, rather than immediately trying to prove them why they're wrong, why don't we just stop for a second, acknowledge what they said, let them know we acknowledge what they said by repeating back some of their words, and then letting them know, hey, you know what, if I were you, I would feel the same way too. And then you can say it this way: I feel the same way too. I would think the same way too, or I would do the same thing too. So it's think, feel, or do, any of those. And you say, well, which one should I use? Well, it depends upon the personality style of the person on the phone. With a Kelly, I would likely, based upon what I know about him at this point in the call, I would say either feel or think. Okay. And again, that has to do with personality styles. We don't have time to get into that right now, but just recognize that you could say that in a few different ways. I would think that way too. I would feel that way too, or I would do that as well. Okay. Response pattern point number 3. I did this as well. I don't know if anybody caught it. It's called a transitional statement. Transitional statement. Kelly, do you remember what a transitional statement is?
Yeah, let's see. In this example, I guess it'd be that being said.
Yes, bingo.
Whatever else you did after that.
So we could say, and gang, write this down because Kelly's spot on. A transitional statement is that being said. And what is that being said? What's that referring to? It's referring to that Kelly said, kind of burned out by this whole thing. Don't know that we're going to do anything right now. And then I said, I repeated and affirmed that. And then I said, well, that being said, right? The fact that you're burned out, don't think you can do anything right now. With that being said, what I'm trying to do then is move from that topic to the next topic. With that being said, what I'm trying to do is move the conversation forward. A transitional statement allows you to transition from one topic or conversation to the next one without umming and ahhing and trying to figure out awkwardly, okay, what do I do next? Well, what you do next is you use a transitional statement. Having said that, as important as that is another transitional statement, as important as that is. So Kelly, what I hear you saying is that you're burned out. You don't know you're going to do anything right now. Well, as important as that is, let me ask you a question. Had your home sold? Where were you planning on moving to next? So that's the way it works. I could also say, well, now that I know that, so you're burned out and don't think you're going to do anything right now. Well, Kelly, now that I know that, let me ask you, had your home sold? Where were you planning on moving to next? So again, you see how that works. It allows me to very smoothly transition from, yeah, we're not going to do anything, to, so had your home sold? Where were you planning on moving to next? It would be an awkward question had I not used the transitional statement. It allows me to segue, to transition to the next topic. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right. Then step number 4 in the response pattern is a pattern interruption. A pattern interruption. Now, Kelly, did you catch the pattern interruption in the conversation up to this point?
Not sure I did.
Okay, it's kind of tricky, but it's there. So let's do it again. You just give me your objection. Go ahead and say it. Say we're kind of burned out.
Yeah, I'm just kind of tired of the whole process, frankly. It didn't work out, and I don't know. I'm just kind of burned out on all of it.
Ouch. Kelly, I'm sorry to hear that you're burned out and tired about the whole situation and really not interested in doing anything right now. You know what? If I were you, I'd feel exactly the same way too. It's a very stressful situation, and I understand that. So now that I know that, now this next statement is the pattern interruption. Okay. I said the transitional statement is, now that I know that, here comes the pattern interruption. had your home sold, where were you planning on moving to next? Now that's the pattern interruption. Well, John, how is that the pattern interruption? Well, remember, what was the first topic of discussion? What's the intent of the conversation? What was the reason for my call?
To try to book an appointment on an expired listing.
Bingo. That's it. To book an appointment to sit down with Kelly to talk about listing his home so he can get it sold this time. But he said, no, not interested in that at this point. So rather than continue to talk about at this point, I put that on the shelf and I transitioned from that to, if your home had sold, where are you planning on moving to next? That is a question being used as a pattern interruption because it's a question off topic. The topic was, let's meet for an appointment. Let's have you interview me. And I shelved that and then just simply asked him about, had his home sold, where was he planning on moving to next? In other words, I changed the topic. That's an interruption to the pattern. The pattern was, let's meet for an appointment. I shifted from that to, let's just simply talk about what you were planning on doing had your home sold. Does that make sense, gang?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, at least it makes sense to you, Kelly. You get to speak for everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So that's step number 4, pattern interruption. But I want you to write next to that, the pattern interruption takes the form of asking questions. So at this point, you should be asking 3+ questions. So what I'm going to do is, the first question I asked Kelly was, well, had your home sold, where were you planning on moving to next? Now my job is to ask at least 2 more questions. So I'm asking him a total of 3 questions. And then I'll chat with you what we do beyond that. So Kelly, let's just do that. So, and now that I know that, Kelly, share with me, had your home sold, where were you planning on moving to next?
We're planning on going to Colorado.
Oh my heavens, to Colorado. So you were looking to move out of state.
Yeah.
What was taking you to Colorado?
Well, just, I have family there, but even more than that, it just has, mountains and just all the outdoor stuff that we love to do. And rather than just vacationing there some, we really kind of think about living there at some point.
So in addition to family, though, it sounds like you're really looking to make a lifestyle change and be closer to the recreation and things that you like to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess my question is that I guess more specifically is, what do you think prevented your home from selling?
I don't know. I mean, I think the home's pretty decent. The other agent, convinced us that we could sell it for damn near anything we wanted to in this market. And so, I know our price was at least at the top of what this house would sell for. But, we kind of needed that to do what we wanted to do in Colorado, to go where we wanted to go. And then, we didn't really have offers that justified our selling it. It was, it was going to not at the price we needed, at least. So
I see.
Yeah.
Well, and Kelly, let me ask you this question. I don't know that it's possible, but let's just imagine that it were possible. If it were possible for you to sell your home in today's market at the price that you need in order to move to Colorado, would you still be interested in doing that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'd certainly be interested.
Okay. Well, that's the very reason we should get together. Look, while your home was on the market for 6 months, my company sold over 4,000 homes. And I guess my question for you is, how many homes do you need to sell?
Well, just one right now.
Just one. Yeah. And that's the cool part. What I know is that we certainly have the ability to sell your home. The question is, can we create a scenario that makes sense for you and it would allow you to get what you want, to net what you want, and move to Colorado? And again, I don't know that that's possible, but since it is a possibility, to your point, it seems like it would make sense to meet for a few minutes and just see if we could put together a plan where that is feasible. So what would work best for you, an afternoon or an evening where we could do that?
Evening.
Evening, great.
I work most days, so evening would probably be best.
Cool. And I've got some time either tonight or tomorrow night. Which night would be better for you?
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right. And would 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock be best for you?
7.
Okay, great. Okay, gang. So let's just pause here for a second. So I asked 3+ questions. I asked actually more than 3, but what I did is I interrupted the pattern of, hey, let's meet for appointment. I got Kelly to open up and talk more about what he was trying to accomplish. And then I started to ask some questions that started to move us back towards the idea of setting an appointment and helping him get to Colorado. One of the things that I did, very importantly, is helped him revisit why ultimately he wants to be in Colorado. It was really a lifestyle change. It's about improving his life and doing ultimately what he wants to do. It wasn't a forced move. It wasn't a job transfer. He wasn't financially distressed, trying to sell the home and move to a cheaper place. At least that's not what he said. It was really about, no, we love the mountains. We love the recreation. We want to get closer to the family. I mean, it's just like he wants to live this dream. So in asking those questions, it allowed him to say it, reconnect with that. And then I just simply said, I don't know if it's possible, but if it were, would you be interested? He said, yes. See, what I'm trying to do is to get him back towards the original intention of the call, which is to set an appointment so we can explore the possibility of him getting the home listed and actually sold this time. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and then step number 5 is just simply the closing question. And I did that. And how did I do it? Do you remember how I closed you, Kelly, what the phrase was?
Well, you asked about afternoons or evenings or
Yeah, it was
something like
before.
that.
Yeah, it was before that. Remember when I asked you, I said, if it were possible, I don't know that it is, but if we could get your home sold for as much as you want to get to Colorado, would you still be interested in that? And you said,
Yes.
and I responded, in this game, this is the close. Well, that's the very reason we need to get together. That's the very reason. That's the close. So Kelly, that's the very reason we need to get together. So what works best for you? And then we work through that alternate answer questions. Okay, so the close is that's the very reason. And it really doesn't matter what Kelly said. Kelly could have said anything, and I'm going to say, and that's the very reason, Kelly, we need to get together. Well, he could say to me, well, John, I don't know this possible because, my agent was pretty adamant that that we would have to reduce the price, and I don't really want to do that. And my response is going to be, and you know what, Kelly, that is the very reason we need to get together. Doesn't matter what he says. After those 3+ questions in that conversation that we had, I'm simply going to circle back to the close and say, and that is the very reason we need to get together. So what would work best for you, an afternoon or an evening? Okay, so gang, that's the response pattern. Hopefully you've written down all 5 of those points. If you will follow that in your calls, learn that process, so you don't have to think about it, you can just do it. You will lead people more confidently, more powerfully through these conversations. They'll flow much more easily. People will feel more comfortable, and they're more likely to open up. I'll give you a great example of this, and we're going to finish this. It was a just listed, just sold call, and I called this woman, and immediately out of the gate, with the just listed, just sold, I told them about a home that had recently sold, and I asked her if they had any plans of moving now or in the near future. She said, nope, we've been here for 4 years. We're very happy, not intending to move, but thank you for your call. Well, I just continued through the script using the response pad, and I said, oh, great, you've been in the home for 4 years and you don't have any plans on moving. If I were you, if you love the neighborhood, I wouldn't want to move either. So let me ask you, how did you happen to pick the area? We started to have that conversation. I asked multiple questions. I probably asked 7, 8, 9, 10 questions. 15 minutes into the conversation, this is the woman said. She said, well, we actually have been talking about moving because my husband has knee problems and we have a 2-story and the bedroom's upstairs and he's having a very difficult time going up and down the stairs. I said, well, that's the very reason we need to get together so we can take a look at, explore the opportunity of selling the home and finding one that works for you. What would work best for you? And then I set an appointment. But the reason that happened is because initially she wasn't willing to have a conversation with the stranger She wasn't going to be authentic, but because I repeated and affirmed, asked other questions that allowed her to feel comfortable to begin to discuss really what was going on in their lives, I was then able to circle back around and close her for an appointment. Just remember, this response pattern works, but you have to learn it and practice it so that when you make the calls, you're actually leveraging it. So, gang, I hope this was helpful. Go back and watch this, watch it, rewatch it, rewatch it, rewatch it, rewatch it, because that's what it takes. It's like Tom Cruise. He will read a script, read a script, read a script, read a script, read a script over and over and over and over and over again, so that when he's in front of the camera, he doesn't have to think about the script. He becomes the script. And that's what we need to do. And if you'll become this response pattern and the script that you're using, you'll be very eloquent, you'll be very powerful, you'll be very convincing, you'll help people feel very comfortable. Lynn, you're going to find this on YouTube. There is, if you'll just do John Ciet, Century 21 Everest Morning Ascent, I'm assuming that Russ will save it under response pattern, or it may be saved under the date, but just use keywords Century 21 Everest, John Ciet Morning Ascent, with a key word response pattern or the date, and it should come up. Okay. All right, gang, let's finish this up with some closing affirmations.